Good afternoon. When we came into office, we immediately conducted an audit of the public finances, and we found a £22 billion black hole. Now, the Independent Office of National Statistics has conducted vital work on the state of immigration and found the previous government were running an open borders experiment. As the ONS sets out, nearly 1 million people came to Britain in the year ending June 2023. That is 4 times the migration levels compared with 2019. Time and again, the Conservative Party promised they would get the numbers down.
Imagine waking up one morning to discover that a sitting Conservative MP, educated at Eton no less, has decided that the best way to save Britain is to jump ship to Nigel Farage Reform UK and start planning for Prime Minister Farage. Not just any MP, mind you, but Danny Kruger, former political secretary to Boris Johnson, speechwriter for David Cameron, and the son of culinary legend Prue Leith. If British politics were a soap opera, this would be the Christmas special cliffhanger that has everyone spitting out their tea. Welcome to 2025, where the political landscape has become so utterly bonkers that defecting to Reform UK is being presented as a sensible, moderate option. Buckle up, because this story is absolutely wild. Quick favor, if you are loving this absolute chaos, smash that subscribe button right now. Seriously, over 94% of you watching have not subscribed yet, and it is completely free. Takes literally 2 seconds, and helps us keep bringing you these brilliant political plot twists. Cheers if you did. Right, back to the madness. So here's what has happened, and honestly, you could not make this up if you tried. Danny Kruger, the MP for East Wiltshire, did not just quietly slip into Reform UK through the back door. No, he marched in through the front entrance in September, becoming the first sitting Conservative MP to officially join Nigel Farage's party, and he has been handed the absolutely monumental task of preparing Reform UK for government. Not preparing them to be a slightly larger opposition party, not getting them ready to win a few more seats, but actually preparing them to govern Britain with Nigel Farage as Prime Minister. Let that mental image settle in for a moment. Prime Minister Farage. It is either your worst nightmare or your wildest dream, depending on which side of the political spectrum you call home. Kruger is not messing about either. In a quiet corner of the Palace of Westminster, this father of 3 is plotting what he calls a transformation of the country. He believes Britain's democracy faces an emergency, which is quite a statement coming from someone who spent years trying to make the Conservative Party into something it apparently never wanted to be. This is a man who worked for David Cameron, Boris Johnson, and was a leading member of the New Conservatives group that pushed for tougher immigration policies. He has been in the thick of Conservative politics for 25 years, and now he is saying that only reform can save the country. That is not just burning your bridges, that is blowing them up with dynamite and then posting the explosion on social media. His reasoning is brutally simple and rather compelling if you are inclined to agree with him. Kruger believes in Nigel and the philosophy of reform, and they are the party he always wanted the Tories to be. For a quarter of a century, he hoped the Conservatives would transform into his ideal political vehicle. But after the catastrophic 2024 election and the subsequent soul-searching, he concluded they were over as a national party and would not deliver the change that is needed. Their public reputation, he argues, is so utterly destroyed that even if Winston Churchill came back from the dead and took the helm, he could not overcome the brand problem. That is a pretty devastating assessment from someone who dedicated most of his adult life to the party. But here's where it gets properly interesting, and this is a bit that should have Labour strategists waking up in cold sweats. Kruger is not content with just being another Reform MP making noise from the backbenches. His job, as he sees it, is to prepare reform for government. He is working on detailed plans to get legislation through what he calls a resistant House of Lords to stop judicial activism from frustrating the agenda and to extract Britain from what he colourfully describes as a spaghetti of international law that enables lawyers to clog up action, particularly on deportation and border security. This is not amateur hour. This is a former government insider who knows exactly how Whitehall works, now applying that knowledge to building a Reform UK administration from the ground up. The timing of his defection is fascinating. It happened in August when he was back in his East Wiltshire constituency, which suggests this was not some impulsive decision made in the heat of parliamentary drama. He had survived the 2024 election bloodbath that wiped out most of his new Conservative colleagues, and Kimi Badenoch had even appointed him as a shadow work and pensions minister. By all accounts, he was doing fine in the post-election Conservative Party. But something clicked. He decided the time had come to break with the Conservatives, phoned up Nigel Farage, who promptly came to his house, and any last reservations were cast aside. Can you imagine that conversation? Two of the most divisive figures in British politics, sitting in a country house in Wiltshire, planning the future of the nation over tea and biscuits. Kruger has clearly learned from the challenges Boris Johnson faced when taking over government in 2019. He remembers that Johnson came in a bit of a rush without a clearly worked out and accepted plan for transformation, whereas Reform UK is building that plan now with a year or two to do it properly. He is more optimistic and excited about this phase of British politics than he has ever been, because he thinks the country desperately needs change and Reform has the capability to deliver it if they plan properly. It is a very exciting moment full of potential and risk, as he puts it, which is possibly the understatement of the decade. Now, you might be wondering what Keir Starmer thinks about all this, and according to Kruger, the Prime Minister should be absolutely terrified. Kruger believes Starmer is quite right to be kept awake at night by the idea of reform, because they represent a total and absolute existential threat to his worldview in a way the Conservatives simply do not. This is not just political point scoring. This is a fundamental ideological battle for the soul of Britain. Kruger genuinely fears a scenario where Labour, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, Scottish and Welsh nationalists, and independents form some kind of progressive super-coalition to stop reform. He can imagine them disestablishing the church, taking Britain out of NATO, and implementing what he calls a whole smorgasbord of dystopian left-wing policies that are only held back by the need to appeal to Middle England. That scenario keeps him up at night, and he is determined reform will present what he calls a better alternative for the country. But here's where Kruger's political philosophy gets really intriguing, because he is not your typical hard-right politician, and he knows it. This is a man who, as a speechwriter for David Cameron, helped develop compassionate conservatism and penned what became known as Cameron's Hugger-Hootie speech. He founded a charity called Only Connect that helps prisoners before and after release. He is deeply religious, having converted to Christianity in his 20s through his now-wife Emma, and he sees the country's crisis as not just political and economic, but cultural and spiritual as well. Our roots are Christian, but we have abandoned them, he argues, and maintaining traditions like Christmas is essential for understanding the origin story of British culture. So how does this compassionate Christian conservative reconcile his beliefs with joining a party that many critics label as far-right? Kruger does not think there is any contradiction at all. He insists there is no hang M and flog M tendency in reform, claiming the party has a robust and sensible attitude to law and order. He wants more prisons and longer sentences, certainly, but he is also an earnest advocate of rehabilitation and what he called compassion, love, forgiveness, and support. Far from seeing reform as a far-right party, he considers it a force for unity in a time of division. The best possible defense against the far-right, he argues, is actually reform itself. If you are worried about a divided society, you have got to vote for the party that can unite people around decent, respectable conservatism that addresses legitimate concerns about mass migration and crime. This is the argument that makes centrists across Britain simultaneously choke on their morning coffee. Kruger is positioning Nigel Farage as a moderate option, the sensible choice, the inoculation against extremism. The best defense against the drift of the extremes, he says, is Nigel Farage. We have an emergency in our democracy right now, and Farage stands for what decent mainstream people in Britain want, which is radical change combined with a commitment to democratic processes and the rule of law. If reform does not win and Britain reverts to what he calls the centrist quagmire of Labour, Conservatives, and Liberal Democrats, he genuinely fears for British democracy. That is quite a political gambit, essentially arguing that to save democracy, Britain needs to elect the most controversial political figure of the modern era. The parallels with the 2019 election are deliberate and strategic. Just as Farage's Brexit party stood down candidates to avoid splitting the right-wing vote and allow Boris Johnson Conservatives to win, Kruger is now pleading with Conservatives to get behind reform. He calls the Tories potential blocker for a reform victory and suggests that any Conservative who could plainly see the national interest would themselves step down, meaning join the Reform Party. This is not just bridge burning. This is actively trying to dismantle what remains of the Conservative Party and absorb it into Reform UK. It is political consolidation on a scale Britain has not seen in generations. But Kruger is not limiting his ambitions to just former Conservatives. He has huge respect for a number of Labour MPs and would love to see them back Reform as well. He thinks they would bring strong communitarian principles about solidarity and that patriotic Labour tradition, which has been completely abandoned by what he calls the technocratic globalists now in charge. There is clearly space within Reform for Labour defectors, he says, which is an absolutely fascinating insight into how Reform UK sees itself. This is not a party content with being a right-wing protest movement. They are positioning themselves as a party for anyone who feels abandoned by the current political establishment, whether they come from Conservative or Labour traditions. Despite the radical nature of the changes he envisions, Kruger denies that Reform is revolutionary. We are about restoration, he insists. They want to restore the proper basis of British politics in the country, which he thinks is a widely popular mission. It is a clever rhetorical move, framing radical change as actually a return to traditional values rather than a leap into the unknown. He even has a painting of the conservative philosopher Roger Scruton in his office, which tells you everything you need to know about how he sees himself. This is not a revolutionary tearing down institutions. This is, in his mind, a conservative restoring them to their proper function. The man's ambition and optimism are genuinely remarkable. When asked about his role as one of Reform's 5 MPs, there is no hesitation whatsoever. My job is to prepare us for government, he says flatly. Not might prepare, not hopefully prepare, but is preparing Reform UK to govern Britain. He describes it as a great pleasure, but also a daunting responsibility that he is relishing. This is someone who has gone all in on the Reform project with the kind of conviction that is either admirable or terrifying depending on your perspective.